afternoon and welcome into Studio 125 for this year's first episode of The Neutral Zone. I'm your host, Drew Feinberg, and for the next 15 minutes, we'll be strapping on ice skates and talking all things Quinnipiac hockey. I'm joined by men's ice hockey beat reporter MJ Baird. And MJ, a very important upcoming weekend for Rand Pecknold's squad, wouldn't you say?
Very much so, Drew, but I do want to clarify one thing. We don't actually have skates on under this desk, but I really wish I did.
I wish. I mean, I can't ice skate, but...
Right. But like you said, up to this weekend,
Yeah.
this is, Quinnipiac has 2 games this weekend, at Yale on Friday night and at Brown on Saturday night, and these really are 2 crucial games for this team. I was just talking about it before the show. Quinnipiac picks up 4 points last weekend in phenomenal fashion. They beat Clarkson, and then they go on and beat St. Lawrence like they should have, but it was definitely an upset of the number 3 Clarkson. Then they have, like I said, crosstown rival Yale Friday night. Me and Kyle Lavasser will be up at that game, so check out Q30 TV for all our content. But this is really a crucial game. I mean, these teams are close to each other in the standings, and Quinnipiac, if they can keep this roll going, I mean, I asked Rand Pecknold last weekend, I said, do you think this is going to be a weekend where you're like picking up momentum for good? And he said, well, you know, it's gonna depend how we play next weekend. As you see on your screen right now, Quinnipiac in 7th place and Yale in 8th there, and really that's going to be a big difference maker, because if you look at the points, Quinnipiac has 14, Yale has 13. Quinnipiac, say they pick up 2, they're moving back up. Now they're looking in towards one of those 5, 6, 7 seeds, and that could be, you know, a real deal breaker for this team. And then if you go to Saturday night over at Brown, Quinnipiac won this game pretty handily earlier in the year. It was 5-0. Quinnipiac, this game was at home. Landon Smith had a hat trick. Of course, he's been out of late for Quinnipiac, but you know, if they go into Providence like they should and get a W, that's 2 more points. That's going to bring them closer towards the top of the ECAC standings, and then they have their remaining schedule.
Well, MJ, you already started to talk about it, but let's really dive into the ECAC playoff picture. Currently, Quinnipiac sits in the 7th position with 14 league points, with 6 games remaining, all conference games, MJ. What do you see the Bobcats' playoff picture looking like at the end of the season?
Well, yeah, this is definitely an interesting question. I think we could talk for 20 minutes alone on it if we wanted, but let's dive into it a little bit. Like you said, they have 6 games left: Yale, Brown, Union, RPI, St. Lawrence, and Clarkson. So Quinnipiac right now 6-8-2 in the conference, 2 games below 500, and as you said, drew 14 league points. So Yale, Brown, RPI, and St. Lawrence. 4 of those games are against teams that are below them in the standings, right? So theoretically, if Quinnipiac does what they're supposed to do, they should win those 4 games. The other 2 are against Union and Clarkson, which are teams above them in the standings. So again, theoretically, if they do what they're supposed to do, they would lose those two games. So if they do what they're, again, quote unquote, supposed to do, they're looking at a 500 record come the end of the year. It would be 10-10-2. Really, to salvage 500, when you know, last week or even last month we were talking about how this team would be really struggling to reach the 500 mark, that's not bad at all. They're basically, I mean, I don't know if this is mathematically with ties and points, but they're not going to get a top 4 seed. That's just not going to happen.
Right.
So they won't be having that first round bye, but they can get a 5, 6, 7, or 8 seed, which would mean they would host in the first round of the ECAC tournament. Well, I personally think Quinnipiac really needs this, because if they have to go on the road in the first round, which would mean they'd be a 9, 10, 11, or 12 seed, they're going to struggle.
Right.
I don't think they're going to be able to get that first round win. But if they're at home, they have their crowd, they get their own beds, their own food, their own routine, et cetera, et cetera. So Quinnipiac could very easily be a team that moves on from the first round. But here's another thing. If you go back and look at those ECAC standings, only 4 points separate places 5 through 9 in the standings. This is interesting, because that means there's a lot of parity right in the center there. The team that's in 5th place and the team that's in 9th place are 2 wins apart from each other. That's Yale and that's Colgate. I mean, granted, I don't think Yale's necessarily going to jump all the way up to the 5 seed, but it's college hockey. Anything can happen.
Of course.
You know what I mean? Down this stretch of ECAC play, teams have home games, teams have away games, teams choke, teams step up in the clutch. I mean, Clarkson just last weekend, they come down to Quinnipiac and Princeton and lose both. I can tell you no one expected that to happen. No one in Quinnipiac, no one in Princeton, and no one up in Clarkson either. So my prediction, I mean, you didn't ask for it, but I'll give it.
I think it anyway. Hey.
I think Quinnipiac gets the 6th seed. They're going to host the 11 seed in the first round. Will they win that? That's yet to be seen, who the 11 seed is, how the Bobcats, will they continue this passionate play down the stretch? I mean, it's all a mix-up, a toss-up, what's going to happen with this team, but I say they'd be the 6th seed.
Definitely a confidence boost defeating Clarkson this past weekend, but we will see moving forward where the Bobcats will move in the standings. But MJ, the Bobcats travel to New Haven to face in-state rival Yale on Friday, and then stay on the road to face Brown on Saturday. First off, How do you think the Bobcats will fare against these two teams, and who do you think needs to really step up for the Bobcats in order for them to pick up 2 victories?
Yeah, so I think 4 points, as I said before, if Quinnipiac does what they're supposed to do, is very attainable. I think it should happen. I think Quinnipiac should get a minimum 3 points this weekend, but certainly 4. As I said before, Quinnipiac won against Yale and Brown earlier this season. They shut both teams out, actually. So that's an interesting note there. To answer your question, Drew, how will they fare? I think Quinnipiac will win both. It's not going to be easy in Yale, I'll tell you that, because there's always, a good atmosphere down there. A little mental note, this really shouldn't have any impact on the game. Keith Lane will not be there. He's over in South Korea as the assistant coach for the U.S. national team. So maybe Yale will play off its game without its head coach. I don't know. I don't expect that to be a factor, but it's just a thing. And remember this, too. The last time Quinnipiac played Yale was the Saturday of Thanksgiving break. The game was at home. You're seeing some highlights from it now. But it really wasn't as packed as it typically is for a Quinnipiac versus Yale game. Not only because Quinnipiac was struggling at the time, but also because it was that Saturday of Thanksgiving break, and not all the students were here, to kind of support their team. 3 different goal scorers for the Bobcats against Yale. So because this team's starting to pick it up on the offensive end, Alex Whalen in particular, Odin Tufto in particular, and the goalies, Andrew Shortridge and Keith Petrozelli have both been very good for this team. So to be honest with you, if you ask me to pick a top 5 players on the team, right now, both goalies are in that top 5. So it's interesting. Who's it going to be down the stretch? Last year, Andrew Shortridge won the job away from Chris Truhl. Is it going to be the freshman Petrozelli or the sophomore Shortridge? I don't know. I think it's an interesting question.
Well, we will see, but, you mentioned a little bit top 5 players. Maybe top 3 players we're going to talk about now? Well, at times, Rand Pecknold has said his players have yet to buy in to the system. However, as of late, we have seen a surge of offense from the once struggling Bobcats team. MJ, you said top 5 already, but if you had to pick a top 3, who would be in your top 3?
Yeah, this one's tough. Theoretically, you could just go with the points leaders. You could go with, whoever's out there for the best plus minus, whoever scores the most goals, puts up the most assists. But I'm kind of going to take everything into consideration here. Specifically, because this Quinnipiac team has struggled, as you said, with buy-in this year, I'm going to take 3 guys, 3 locker room guys that I think not only are they, doing their job on the ice, but they're doing their job off the ice. And I've gotten hints from Rand Pecknold in the press conference that these guys are the kind of guys that are stepping up. One of them is a transfer student, John Fergelli. He's recently named an assistant captain. He sat out last year. So maybe he doesn't have the most points or the most assists or the best plus minus on the team, but I think he's one of the guys keeping this locker room together right now. Another one, Odin Tufto. Rand Pecknold has, ranted about him after games earlier in the season when Quinnipiac was really struggling that, in some games he even said that Tufto was the only lone bright spot from that game. So I have Odin Tufto in the top 3, not to mention that he's, scoring goals and making assists like it's nothing.
For fun.
Right, exactly. And then the third guy is this guy, he always has a smile on his face, it's Alex Whalen. He's out there scoring goals, he's out there getting assists, he hustles, every shift he's got 100%. It's almost like the guy never gets tired. So those are my top 3 right now. Like I said, not necessarily skill guys, but my top 3 locker room guys.
Not a bad top 3 there, MJ. Well, we're going to take a short break, but when we return, we switch over to the women's side and discuss a huge weekend in which the Bobcats host 2 nationally ranked teams. Stick around.
Hello, and tonight on Sandwich News, we will determine what makes a good sandwich and a bad sandwich. First, the standard sandwich. Uninspired, and frankly, a little gross. But we have here a Ray and Mike sandwich, the Cadillac of sandwiches. And if you want one, well,
come on down to Ray and Mike's at 3030 Whitney Ave, Hamden, Connecticut. Open every day from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Qcash is accepted.
now that's a sandwich.
Bobcat Breakdown presented by the Quinnipiac Bobcats Sports Network.
We are your source for debate.
Did they make the playoffs last year, Tom Jenkins?
When it clicks, it clicks.
We dissect Quinnipiac athletics on a scale you've never seen before.
With Tobia, it almost looks like she's reaching a little bit.
Plus, we're bringing the biggest names surrounding college sports.
We are live here at the Times Union Center with Jay Billis.
And of course, some comedy.
But you can only have so much arena food.
I think you're crazy. Bobcat Breakdown.
Tuesdays at 9:30.
Welcome back, and thanks for sticking with us. I'm now joined by women's ice hockey beat reporter Mike Dalton. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm good, Drew. How are you?
I'm amazing. Well, We'll start with the women. We'll talk about the women's ice hockey team now. The team is currently ranked 5th in the ECAC standings. Do you see the Bobcats making any moves in the standings towards the end of the season? And ultimately, where do you see them finishing at the end of the season?
Well, honestly, Drew, they're ranked 5th right now in the ECAC, as you see that full screen pulled up right there. I don't really think they're going to move at all because Cornell is several points ahead of them. Princeton is 5 points back. And even if Quinnipiac does get swept this weekend, I still think that they're going to stay where they are because Princeton would have to win out in order to pass the Bobcats. And St. Lawrence, they're a good team. They're at least going to win 2 of their last couple games. So I think the Bobcats will stay where they are.
Well, there's no doubt this is a huge weekend for the Bobcats as they host nationally ranked number 8 St. Lawrence, and then on Friday, and then on Saturday they host number 1 Clarkson. Mike, what do you think the Bobcats need to do to pick up 2 victories this weekend? And what do you do you think they have enough to beat 2 nationally ranked teams?
All right, yeah, well, I do think they have what it takes to beat 2 nationally ranked teams. However, I don't think that they're going to beat both teams this weekend. I think they're going to lose to Clarkson personally because Clarkson lost to the Bobcats back in November, and they want to avenge that win. They want to come in and beat the Bobcats on their home ice. So I think they are certainly going to beat them. If I had to choose which team Quinnipiac has a better chance of beating, I'd choose St. Lawrence. St. Lawrence scored 4 goals against them. However, Melissa Samoskevich scored twice in a 4-2 loss back in November as well. So I think that they certainly have what it takes to beat St. Lawrence. They just got to do a little bit of a better job defensively. And other than that, I think they'll be in good shape.
It's definitely going to be tough to beat Clarkson at home, especially with Shea Tiley, the goaltender for Clarkson, a 1.37 goals against, arguably best goaltender in the ECAC
yes,
for the women's.
absolutely.
And I mean, like you said, against St. Lawrence, Melissa Samoskevich really stepped up. She leads the team with 13 goals this season, but we will see going forward and this weekend what happens with the Bobcats. Some would consider this somewhat of a down year for the team, already surpassing 10 losses. 10 losses they had last season. As a whole, Mike, what do you think needs to improve with this team?
Well, I think offense really needs to step up this weekend. I mean, and I'm not just saying Samoskevich or Lancaster or Bonsteel, they're 3 top point scorers, but the whole team. I mean, you know, as a team, Quinnipiac women's hockey has 143 total goals or 143 total points this season, excuse me. And Clarkson's top 3 players in points, Lauren Gable, Elizabeth Jaguar, Michaela Pojlova, they have 154 points alone.
Not bad, not
Their
bad.
whole first line has more points than the entire Bobcat team. So, I mean, obviously, if I'm in Quinnipiac, I'm a little nervous, and I'm sure Cass Turner knows that. But, you know, I don't think it's just the top 3 players that need to step up. I think it's just the whole team, even defenders. You know, Kate McKenzie is one of the best slap shots on the team. Feed the puck to her a little more when they're in the offensive zone, you know, especially if they can't get the puck close to the net, because obviously Clarkson's got to have a stout defense because they're the #1 team in the country. And I just think that they also can't afford to turn over the puck in the neutral zone. They struggled with that a little bit against RPI, even though they ended up shutting them out 2-0. That's RPI. That's a 9th team in the ECAC. This is Clarkson and St. Lawrence we're talking about. This is the #1 and 8 team in the country. And if you turn the puck over to them in the neutral zone, they not just might, they're going to make you pay for it. And I think as long as they can address those 2 matters, I think they can certainly hold their own.
I got to ask you, so Brooke Bonsteel, freshman forward, do you think this is a weekend that we could really see her stepping up and showing that she has what it takes to lead this team, really? Brooke Bonsteel, 10 goals already as a freshman.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think she's already stepped up all year. She's been such a playmaker. She's been a good net front presence for the Bobcats. And, you know, I disagree with you a little bit. I think that she's already stepped up. I don't think she has too much to prove.
Hey, well,
yeah.
You got me. Yeah, you got me there. Well, that's all the time we have for this week's edition of the Neutral Zone. Make sure to keep up with all our content at Q30TV.com and follow us on social media at Q30 Sports. For MJ Baird and Mike Dalton, I'm Drew Feinberg. We'll see you next time.